Work hard and I never take a day off. Y'all consider me as nothing but a target till I'm locked and loaded ready. If these motherfuckers want it, they said hip-hop's dead. I disagree with that statement, so don't repeat that shit again. And think of me when you say it, cause I'm the reason that it's breathing. Put it back on the stretch of the real deal.
Alright, welcome to this week's episode of Archon's Corner. The Wookie is out on a business trip, so it is me, Big Z, as almost always, not really. But we have a special co-host today with me, also of Archon's Corner, Grant. Nice having you.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, good to be here, especially with you. Last time I was here was with Wookie, when you were gone.
Yes, of course. More often it's me that is gone than Wookie, trying to maintain my spot as the ever end of the season just keeps crawling its way further and further away. It's like, how much longer do I have to hold on? Nobody knows, but I think we finally kind of got an answer. This wasn't one of our highlighted goals of today to talk about, but we did kind of get information from Alex via some Facebook responses that the leaderboard is, I think in one of his responses he hinted that it would be reset after Worlds, and I think in the Ask Me Anything, after the Vault that is coming up here in a couple weeks in Dallas, actually literally here where I am, anyone that is in the top 100 at any point in time from that point until Worlds will get a ticket even if it gets bounced out. So that's pretty good news.
Yeah, a bunch of invites.
Yeah, that's a bunch of invites. So if you're on the bubble and then say Chicago comes around, Schaumburg, you get bounced out, you still got your ticket. And if you eke yourself in and then get bounced out by Oakland, Alameda, whatever it is, the boat, you would also keep your ticket and new people would get invited. So there's a lot of chances for people to make it to Worlds coming up. So that's cool. So since Grant's here and he was also at Albany, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in regards to, so a lot of people have asked us about strategy here and there. So we're going to talk about just Albany in general, the survival, and then some strategies that come into play when we're looking at decks that we saw and thought of there. So they already heard a little bit of mine. So share your.
Do you want to give a quick little take on the format again? Remind people.
Yeah. So with survival, you could play 3 decks. If you lose, you have to move on to your next deck. If you run out of decks, you're out. As long as you have at least one deck to play in Day 2, you move on to Day 2. A change from the previous events, whatever decks you have are available to select for the Day 2. So if you went 6-0, you could have picked any deck you wanted. So there's no more double concession nonsense. So I'm not going to go through what it used to be again. But yeah, so because of the change, we as a team, this is Archon's Corner here, but obviously, I play on a team with Grant. We all had our theories about what we're going to see, specifically Day 1 versus Day 2. What was your theory, Grant?
Yeah, so understanding what other people are going to play is extremely important for survival. And my expectation was that, having 3 really good top-tier decks is hard. So people are going to be trying to find something that just works. And what is one of the easiest things to acquire that often just works and can often just instantly win based on card draw? I think that's Coda Rush. So Hunting Witches, Dust Pixies, Nature's Call.
Yeah.
Expect a lot of that.
We were expecting a lot of that, but where were you expecting to see that? Day 1 or Day 2?
I was expecting it Day 1.
Okay.
I was anticipating that people would put a lot of Worlds Collide decks, a lot of new interesting tech in Day 2, so on their 3rd slot, and a lot of Rush to start it off early in the tournament.
I personally had a different take on it. I was expecting most people's best decks to be Coda Rush, the old guard stuff that we're used to experiencing at a Vault, and that to be in their 3rd slot, and then to see more of the new, nuanced, not necessarily nuanced because it's pretty straightforward, but the new big board, here's my Soaring Army, here's my Starlight dudes, they're going to do a bunch of stuff. I was expecting to see that on Day 1. And Grant's a little bit better at the stats and the numbers than me. So what did we see from your vantage? What did we see on Day 1, Grant? Who was right?
So we saw a ton of Coda Rush Day 1.
We did. Not only did we see Coda Rush Day 1, we also saw some of the kind of the stuff we were used to seeing, like janky stuff from before. We saw battle fleets on day one, and we saw, I believe, some Heart on day one. I believe we saw some Jinka on day one. All the stuff that I had been saying we were going to see on day two. So I was wrong. Yeah. I'll fess up. I was totally wrong here.
Well, after the first 2 rounds, or during the first 2 rounds, the things that I really cared about was validating this assumption that I had made. Mm-hmm. So I went and talked to a lot of the people who were X and O, so at undefeated. I said, what was your opponent playing? Round 1, we saw sort of an assortment of things. You saw some Coda control, a Quixelstone deck, Jenka deck, but then we saw 4 Coda Rush decks.
Yeah.
Round 2, people undefeated. The people I talked to saw 5 Coda Rush, 1 Coda with some Mars Battlefleet combo, and then only 1 Saurian deck. So a lot of the people who were playing, day 1, and people who were doing well were playing a lot of Coda Rush.
Yeah.
That small sample size that I saw.
Which was a total twist on what I expected. I expected to see most of the stuff that people were less, what I think people would have been less assured about, which I think is good for the game, because one, that tells me that people are already more confident about what they're seeing out of Worlds Collide and the new decks than what they had before. I think that's really neat. And it means that, whether they ended up being the best deck or not, it means that they are having success with them at their locals, online, wherever they happen to be playing, or else they wouldn't be putting those in those spots. So I think that's a really good sign going forward, especially now that Set 3, Worlds Collide, is a set that they were able to design some of with player feedback and data based on what's going on in the actual meta, so that's really cool. So moving into
when
day
you
2,
were picking... Sorry, before we jump to day 2, when you were picking the order of your decks, did you pick it thinking about explicitly what other people were going to play? Like, did you play a certain one first because you expected Worlds Collide?
I kind of coached some of my team, I guess inaccurately, because of my assumption, and you coached them in the way your assumption. So they both all of our team took our advice. They went with whichever way they wanted. The deck selection that I personally made, my number 1 deck and my number 2 deck were so evenly matched. I could have put them in either slot. I just happened to put the Coda slot on day 1 and the Worlds Collide deck on day 2, because the day 2 deck is my personal favorite. I mean, I could have flipped them either way. I think I would have had similar results either way. I guess not. I guess had I flipped them, my round 1 opponent would have had a very, very tough shot against the Coda deck. But anyway, in the end, I was a misplay is why I got knocked out, which we already went all the way through that. So I'm not here to talk about my misplays again. Read the deck list of your opponent, guys. Pro tip. When I went to choose what decks in the order to play, I didn't really think about what my best decks were, but rather what would counter the meta. So my first 2 decks were heavy anti-Coda decks, with Shrink Guntus to start it off the first round, then a really strong, fast Eddie archiving deck, get the key cost up. And the third one was what I hope to be one of the best anti-Worlds Collide decks. But, we can get to day 2. It turned out to be the best situation for me. And I agree with you. That is definitely one of the best anti-Worlds Collide decks that I've seen. It's rock solid. But, so we progress on to day 2. You were right on day 1. I was wrong. That you got the meta call perfectly. What happens day 2? Talk to us about some numbers.
Day 2. So I got a bunch of top 16 stats. We had a pretty even split between Coda and Worlds Collide. You had 7 Coda, 8 Worlds Collide, 1 AOA deck, which is a really cool 1-turn kill deck with the Sting and Nature's Call, Choda.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was really cool. Of the Coda decks, 5 of them were Rush, 2 of them were control decks. Only one of them had Restraint Guntus. The other one, I think, had multiple Control of the Weaks and Ember Imp. Yeah. On the Worlds Collide side, it was actually really cool to see the diversity in them, because Coda only had 2 main types, Rush and Control. Yeah. Worlds Collide, you had 2 really interesting disruption decks that were triple stealth mode, both of them. One with double Kirby, punctuated Equilibrium, then the other one was a ton of stealing, so double Ronnie, Kaimor, hit and run.
Whew.
Then you get to the other side of that, you had these big board Worlds Collide decks with Saurian. A lot of people were really loving the double Tribune Populous with one of the great strong dinosaurs, so Cincinnatus Rex, or Center Brachus, or Spartosaur. You had all of those guys represented. And I think the last type of deck that we saw, a bunch of Eddies. Everyone loves Eddies. You had one deck that was triple Exhume Eddie, which was really cool.
Hey, Eddie's pretty amazing. The deck that I had actually had a lot of the stuff that you just named. I did have double Tribune with Brachus, double Exhume, double Eddie. I mean, it's fun to play. You slam the stuff down there, and it's just a constant onslaught of how you gonna answer this, how you gonna answer this, how you gonna answer this. It's super fun, and it does well in the meta, as we saw. A lot of these decks didn't lose to get to the deck they were on. They actually did win games with the decks that they were playing on day 2, on day 1. So it's interesting to see that represented, because prior to now, the current meta right now, big board decks was not a thing that we saw. We didn't see this winning any events, basically anywhere at any level, unless it was sealed AoE. And even then, it's probably the ones that were more looking like Coda, that just had better actions, that were generally winning even those sealed vaults. Yes, at the locals, you could probably win a local event or even a store championship in sealed AoE with just a big board. But now, the way the Saurians work, the way the Star Alliance works, it works. I mean, it really does create these constant scenarios, even if your opponent does happen to have a board wipe or two. You play another turn and you play 5 more creatures, and you're just okay, do I have another board wipe? Probably not. So, it's interesting that we are seeing more competitive types of decks out there.
Yeah, I think of the top 8, not 100% sure of this, but I think there was 6 Worlds Collide decks represented in the top 8.
Yeah, so
one of them was the AoE.
6 out of 8's a big number.
Which is crazy, which is amazing to see, Worlds Collide doing so well. And it's still amazing to see that it's not dominated by one set. It wouldn't be that fun if it's all Coda. It would be cool. It wouldn't be that great if it was all Worlds Collide, because people have a lot of amazing Coda stuff. It's really good that it's just even split down the middle.
So,
and I did hear about
it sounds like you kind of called the day 2 meta. So, what happened? Yep. You got the call. You got the perfect anti-Worlds Collide deck. So what happened? What's your brief story?
I hit the one anomaly of the whole tournament. Round 1 matched up against Luke from Team SAS running Galaxy. I think one of the few Coda Rush decks that were on day 2 was my very first match. And if that wasn't rough enough, I was playing a Quixelstone triple Fangtooth Cavern deck. I got lucky. Turn 1, Quixelstone. Luke Poltergeist immediately after that. And that sort of set the tone for the rest of the match. It ended up being close. Yeah. We were both on check, 2 keys, but Control of the Weak sealed the deal for Luke.
Yeah. Galaxy is a great deck. So
unfortunate.
It did go on to win the event, but a quick aside that a few people know about Galaxy. I don't know about the rest of the data. I haven't actually looked at his record recently. But in Denver, it was Nathan's first deck, and he went 4-0 with it, and then he conceded twice because you had to do that back then. And then in Madrid, Duncoro had Galaxy as his first deck, went 4-0, and then conceded twice. So I do not believe Galaxy has ever lost a match in a Vault Tour, other than through concession. Cool. So, pretty good deck.
Yeah, it's an amazing deck. And it's a great win rate online against all sets.
Yeah. It is very, very solid. So you mentioned the top 8. So what did the top 4 look like through the numbers?
Top 4. So top 4 we had that one AoE deck. Super cool. We had 2 Worlds Collide decks. I think both of them were the double Tribune Pompatus decks. One with Rex, one with Brachus. And then Galaxy, of course. All of these were all over the place in terms of SAS, if that's something you keep track of. The AoE deck was a 69. Highest we saw was 83 with Galaxy.
Yep.
And there's a bunch of interesting stats collected by the great folks in the Sanctimonious channel, Discord channel, if you want to jump over there and look at them. The thing that I really cared about, and that's on top of mind, was artifact control. Because there's a lot of crazy artifacts. I ran Quixelstone.
Yeah.
One of my friends ran Heart of the Forest, which actually did some work day 1.
Well, your deck's not just Quixelstone. There's 3 other artifacts in there too.
Triple Fangtooth.
Yes. Cavern's a problem, and when you have 3 of them, it's a big problem. So you would need like Tachyon Pulse or something.
Yeah. So the one prediction that probably didn't turn out in my favor is I expected a lot more people to have hard artifact removal.
Yeah.
But of the top 16 decks, only 8 of them had any artifact interaction, and I think it was 3 that had hard removal. A lot of other people had like remote access or Nexus or stuff like that.
Yeah, I did find that interesting.
It's not what I expected.
Match, like my deck was running Library Apollo, whatever, and Obsidian Forge, and I'm generally looking for artifact control because there's like if there's double Hawk, that means I'm probably just discarding this, or else I'm just giving an extra Amber. If it's Poltergeist, I'm definitely discarding at least the Obsidian Forge because I don't want my opponent to be using it against me. Like, so there's a lot of things that I could see my opponent's deck list have. That means I just discard my 2 artifacts and not worry about it. Like, even Grasping Vines could become a decision point because, like, speed, depending on how fast their deck is, do I want to potentially chain myself? Like, all that goes into consideration. And my first opponent had 0 artifact control, nothing, not a single card. So it was interesting to see that. I saw that a lot throughout the day, actually. I on day 1, like I didn't see that much artifact control there either. So I think the times of being afraid of stuff like Heart or Seed, or even the Quicksilverstone of the future events we're going to go to, I think people aren't that scared of them, and they think they'll just play around it, I guess.
Until they get matched up to me.
Until they get matched up with you.
Yeah.
Which
fun stat,
Oh, go ahead.
I don't think anyone's going to be surprised at all by the houses that were represented in Worlds Collide. Every single deck, except for one, had logos.
Yep.
Saurian was heavily represented, and then Star Alliance. The 3 star houses. 0 Brobnar in Worlds Collide, of course.
Really? Oh, yeah. I'm not saying there cannot be a vault winning deck that has a Worlds Collide Brobnar. I'm just saying if it does, the other 2 houses have to be fantastic. But okay, so thinking of that in mind, with all of the decks we've seen, we've talked a little about like looking at deck lists, and we know we're starting to see more Saurian big board or Star Alliance big board. Either way, when you're playing against a top Worlds Collide deck, I guess we do need to reference like Quicksilverstone deck. So if you're playing against a top Worlds Collide deck, are we pretty safe right now to say we're either expecting these 3 things, like big board through Star Alliance and or Dinosaurs, Quicksilver shenanigans, or disruption via purging? Is that what we're seeing? Because I don't think I've seen in competitive, even online, anything else other than those 3 things recently.
Yeah, I haven't seen much Quicksilverstone, to be honest, other than the one that I run a lot. Disruption is very big. I do see that a lot. So like that a lot.
The 2 main things, I guess, when you're talking Worlds Collide, and we're going to be. It is evident now since it won in Philly, and it came in 2nd, and also 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th in Albany. We're going to be seeing Worlds Collide. I know the next 2 vaults are sealed, but that's what you're going to be expecting to play. And so how do we battle this? And I guess it's sealed. Of course, this matters. How do I battle the big board? If I know I'm going to see Saurians all the time, like, what are we thinking our best strategies going into the day is, if it's Archon or even sealed? Like, how do we battle this 10 dinosaur lineup with Amber on them? Like, what's going on?
Well, sealed is a different story. In sealed, I think there's even higher representation of Saurian because it's so difficult to deal with them.
Well, it's so hard not to pick because it's hard. Like, if you get a 3 decks and like one of them has Saurian XX and the other ones don't have Saurian XX, it's mathematically harder to get a 12 sets of cards that are just bad in Saurian versus the other sets you have. Well, I think like I love Logos the most out of Worlds Collide more than the other houses all. It's slightly harder to get the 12 cards you want to see, whereas like the worst 2 cards in Saurian are both rares. So you're looking at 12.
And what are those 2 cards?
What is it? Diplomacy and So Salt.
Oh yeah, So Salt.
Yeah, they're
gotta love it. No reading.
Bad cards. But hey, at least they're rares, unlike other houses would put their worst cards on common and say, here's 4 bad pennies, or whatever that Deepwood Druid is. Like, you see these all the time. Here's 5 NARPs. I don't know. Like, it's just a big difference in the types of cards you get in Saurian versus the types of cards you get in the other houses. Like, even Star Alliance has that, what is it? The Soto? Like, or the rovers and the like the robot that lets you draw a card or something. Like, these aren't great. You don't want to see them, but the rest of their commons are luckily really good. So, Star Alliance is good.
So, dealing with Saurian in Archon format, you have a few things. One of the best probably has to be bounce effects. That's probably one of the reasons why Galaxy did so good. Double Nature's Call with the dependency to pull that back. Nothing really protects against all that amber that you store up on your creatures. Mm-hmm. You can ward them, that's great, but having a deck that has Nature's Call with other things to break the wards is an amazing counter. Another good thing is hard removal, too.
Yes. So, as far as hard removal, just to make sure we're on the same page with our audience, what do you consider hard removal that is of quality going into a potential field of Saurians and Starlines?
Yeah, so you have like different types of board clears. You have board clears that just say destroy all creatures. This is like Gateway to Dist, Unlock Gateway. Then you have cards like Red Alert, which say deal X amount of damage.
Yep.
And when you're playing against Saurians, especially when you're playing against Tribune Pompidus, where the guy has 16 health, dealing 7 damage to it is not going to clear the board. Yep. So you need things that either are spot instant removal, like Sorry About That, which just says destroy a creature, they gain an amber, or board clears like Unlocked Gateway that will destroy everything. Yeah. And when you're going against Saurian, you'll want stuff also that can like break wards. So Festering Touch works really well to prepare for, say, like a Harbinger of Doom exploding the board.
And that's the interesting thing, like that I've noticed. It's not just like when you're bringing, say, you have a great Coda deck, and you've for the last year basically, you've relied on that Gateway Arise combo or something to that effect. You're looking to put your big board clear and then populate the board. When you look across the table, you see all these wards. So it really becomes a higher utility on certain cards to do damage to everyone. And then you remove all the wards, and then you can set up the combos that you used to do. So I think there's certain things that are a little bit higher in my mind of value than they used to be, like Hebe the Huge, the Horseman of Pestilence, and actually Famine, honestly. Like those things, Piranha Monkeys, like I'm liking these cards a lot more than I used to, because often enough, if you can pop that ward and then play the card you used to rely on, not only is it getting rid of the threat, it's becoming a huge amber swing, because a lot of the times, like a lot of people think of Saurian as just having the amber on them too, but honestly, Star Alliance do that too. When you're looking at like Xeno Training, Frayne, like they put amber on their creatures, so all of these are valuable. Like they're not only clearing their side of the board, they're big swings on your side of the board, and for the most part, those decks amber control are the creatures that are on the board. They're talking about Redder, Garcia, Kincan. Like these things, once they're dead, that is a chunk of their amber control that is actually gone from the game. So, like, thinking of ways to combo with damage, like one of my favorite things that I would want to see, if I'm running a Worlds Collide deck, I know I'm facing other Worlds Collide decks. Like, I want to see Red Alert with Flux, or Zap with Flux, because Flux is a great card. It's definitely hard control as far as creatures go, because you get to target the ones you want. A lot of the times it can almost be one-sided to where it almost doesn't affect you at all, can potentially wipe them out, but you need that first piece. You need that Zap. You need the Red Alert, even if it's just for one. So I don't consider... go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're playing Worlds Collide, most people are playing Logos, so bring a bunch of Positron Bolts and Twin Bolts. I think those work amazingly at targeting the warded creatures that matter before you do a board clear. You already mentioned
Festering Touch. When I first read it, I was like, meh. The more I've played Worlds Collide,
it's good.
I love that card. Especially if you have two. Like, two's great. As much as I hate the card Misery Exploit, it's still in set, so like it does somewhat combo with that in certain cases too. But in general, like the hard removal is critical. Like I'm going to be going to the next 2 sealed vaults, and one of the first things that like I mean I've been forever one of those like, look, you need to count your amber control. Does the deck have enough amber control? Now I think I'm going to be starting to look for hard removal first. As weird as that may be, like yes, amber control is still fairly critical, but I mean, if you don't have a way to deal with a big board, you're going to lose the game no matter how much amber control you have. Because the amber control in Worlds Collide, it's not going to be, for the most part, it's not steal unless you have graft or too much to protect. Like, if you have those two, yes, that's a different consideration. But if you don't have those two, you need to see if you can control their board first.
Yeah, ways to clear the board is the first thing I look at when I look at people's Archon cards, for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm really waiting for someone to bring a Saurian house that has no real Saurian creatures, but is anti-Saurian. Like double Regrettable Meteor, double 6 Semper. That stuff would be super cool. I have a deck sort of like that, but I want to find a better one.
Got it.
Anti-Saurian house.
Okay, so that's how we deal with that. What about the disruption side? Worlds Collide, like Infernus is still popular, and like some people were saying, look, this is just a fad. Like, I don't think it's a fad because it's actually pretty dang good. So, like, if it actually wins games and it plays well and it has a high consistency, it's not going to be a fad. You're gonna keep getting your stuff purged. You're gonna keep seeing Infernus, Assyria, Infernus. That's not going away. So what do I do? How would we battle that?
Yeah, that's the harder one because we haven't seen a large variety of decks do this effectively. We've seen a few, and like Infernus, Hysteria, that's great and all. But one thing that I have seen be very effective, on the fringes, is disgusting, steals, purges your opponent's deck. But putting like a Collar of Subordination on that, or Hypno Beam or something, and stealing that card, that's an amazing counter to that 1-power creature. That actually happened to me at the Albany Vault Tour. It's why I lost my second round deck, because I didn't look at the deck list enough to notice that. They stole my E on the Fringes and then put a Blood of the Titans on it. So it was a 6-power E of the Fringes behind Taunt, and I got decimated because of that.
That's real rough, man. So yeah, they would just discard stuff and purge your deck.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bad. So doing that is really good. How do you counter it? I don't know. Some people like to say, like, don't play decks that have a lot of printed amber. It's like, oh no, Virtuous Works. But you don't really lose much if you gain 3 off Virtuous Works and then they take it back later.
But you kind of do, though, right? Like, not only are you obviously losing that
you waste the utility of a card.
That became a chain in your deck. So, like, but there are certain things that I think are starting to become less playable than they were. Like, I had a deck that had Nep Seed, Key Charge, Fertility Chant. It also had Witch of the Eye, Dominator Bauble. It had a bunch of stuff in there that you could just win games if like, they don't see this or this is ignored, and it generates amber like crazy. But Fertility Chant's like almost unplayable. Like if
Fertility Chant's pretty bad.
Like you can't hold
especially
it,
because it gives your opponent 2 amber.
Yeah, like even if you discard it, that means you just gave them a -4 amber on your side.
Yeah, that's
like
rough.
that's super rough. So like, I don't think I can play a deck that even has that card anymore. Like that's not a lot of decks, but there are decks that have that card. It's actually a pretty good card in a lot of decks that can take advantage of it through Key Charge or whatever. So, like, that was rough. Like, I actually did sell that deck as soon as I saw the last vault, like, the Philadelphia Archon winner. I was like, I can never play this deck against anything remotely close to that deck. I lose. That's 8 amber that I'm going to lose every game because the deck had 2 Fertility Chants. So, hope it does well for the person that got it. But I can't take that to an open Archon. So, I think I think you should be aware of the amount of printed amber in your deck if you're not having a way to take advantage of it. So, if your deck is just full of Dust Pixies and Fuzzy Gruins, stuff like that, they're great cards still. I'm not going to say they're not, and you shouldn't play Dust Pixies. Dust Pixies is amazing. But if it doesn't also have Chota or a key charge, ways to take advantage of your amber immediately have
those
always
amber
been
bursts that you have.
Yeah, those have always been a big deal because they help you against Too Much Protect. They help you against routine job decks. They always help you in the Archon field. I just think they are more important, if that's even a thing, than they were somehow, because that's just a chain in your deck if you're not having to weigh, especially a Virtuous Works. Virtuous Works is not a body. It's just an action. I would much rather now have, I know it's an AOA card, and I don't really want an AOA deck, but I would rather have Free Markets or Eureka or Treasure Map even, because I'm still getting the extra amber. Code Monkey's
amber is
great.
not safe nowadays.
No. So I think that does change. I think that's my initial counter. Be more aware of the actual pips. Ghostly Hand. You most of the time do not steal one, right? That's a given that you're playing that card for 2 amber. And once again, this is still a good card, but since there basically are not key cheats inside of Shadows, it is much less of a card that I want in an Archon deck that I'm taking to open Archon than it was before. Before, sign me up. I'll take 3 or 4, whatever. I mean, that's a key, right?
Yeah.
Generally, you're playing other Shadows cards too, so that's not only a turn where I'm taking them off check. I'm generating a ton of amber. I don't want that anymore. I'd rather just have an Urchin or something like that. Nerve Blast, Relentless Whispers. Yes, that has a pit, but still, those, I would value those over Ghostly Hand, Virtuous Works, to some extent the Dust Pixie. But that's
This purging stuff, I think, is an area within Worlds Cloud and Keyforge that's still underdeveloped. We've seen a bunch of amazing Saurian decks, a bunch of great Logos decks.
I think we're going to see more and more.
Awesome things in Dis for purging your own deck, purging your opponent's deck.
I can give some tips about how to battle specifically. There is a bunch of purge cards in Dis that you can't do anything about. They're just going to play them and whatever. But Infernus specifically is the most common one because it's generally the most devastating. Look for their recursion. So, some decks will have Not Finished With You, some decks will have Exhume, some decks will have Hysteria, even Regrowth if they want to target the off-house. Look for, how they can recur Infernus, and then, play against that. So, if you know that they're recurring it from the field via Hysteria or even platform. I've seen people platform in Infernus. I don't know if I do that most of the time, but I've seen people do it.
Yeah.
If they're recurring it from the field through those 2 methods, kill it. If their deck is primarily recurring it from their from their discard pile via Exhume or even Not Finished With You, leave it on the field. Yes, they can kill it on their own turn, but hey, they're not reaping with it. You're getting to reap. You're not wasting a card on whatever you would have used to kill it anyway. That's probably the biggest thing I can give specifically against Infernus itself.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, when you're looking at the deck list, see how it's going to come back at you, and then play to that strength. That don't make it easy for them to recur. So that's the main set. Well, I guess. I mean, we have seen some Quixelstone decks, but I guess until it's more prevalent, there's not a whole lot to talk about it. But the one thing I can say, don't feel bad about discarding creatures unless it's one of the best 5 creatures in your deck. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You definitely don't want to play, a bad creature and then have it stuck on the field. That's the worst sort of feeling when you have to discard a Val Jericho because you have some junky little creature.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you sit down and your opponent has Quixelstone in their deck, add an Archon, you need to assume that they have some kind of strategy or plan with that Quixelstone, and then if they play it on you, and not just discard it, because some people have it in their deck and they just discard it because the deck's still good, it's just a chain. But if they play it on you, you've got to assume they have some kind of plan, they've practiced this, they know what they're doing. So on your end, you get put in an environment where, you now need to really prioritize what is the value that you put on the field that is a creature, and without going through a lot of Quixelstone, what's actually good and what's not, just in your own mind, if you're about to play a creature and it's not literally one of the best 5 creatures in your deck, you probably should not be playing that creature.
Yeah, that's one of the most fun things for me when I play Quistlestone decks. It's like if my opponent plays 3 bad creatures, 1 of each house, I'm not going to play any more creatures because I want you to keep those things. I'm not going to kill them.
And you're not going to kill them. They're just going to sit there. Like,
Stay
at
there.
most, you reap
You're gonna
once.
reap for 1.
Yeah. It's
Take
beautiful, right? And then, like, they
So
don't
funny.
sacrifice their own creatures. Yeah, it's just one of those things, like, that's...
Especially, you can come at a point where you can't kill your own creatures if your opponent has elusive on all of their guys.
Yep.
If they're of different houses. So you have to
be
keep
really
that in mind.
easy because of, Cloaking Dogma, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Very, very simple. All right, so we talked about like glancing at deck lists a little bit. Well, is there anything else we want to talk about as far as the meta from what we saw at Albany?
I think we covered most of the meta there.
All right, so if I'm looking at a deck list, so there are different things that are happening now than before. What, like you mentioned one of the things, but in general, what's the most important thing you're looking for when you scan a deck list now versus a couple months ago?
What is most important now? So I play a lot of really unique decks, and so it really is tailored to that deck. But I think, like, in general, best stuff to look for, I always look for some sort of scaling steel. So, like, can I go up to 18 amber on my turn, or do I have to stay around 7 or 8 because I'm scared with too much to protect? Still always doing that.
Yeah, that's the same for me.
Important.
That's the very first thing I look for. I'm looking specifically now for graft, too much to protect. We don't care about bait and switch anymore, right? So it's really just those two. To some extent, I will like register in my mind that they might have doorstep, but not as much.
Yeah, it's not as bad.
But so if my opponent has an interdimensional graft or too much to protect, how do I like what do you do against that initially? Because I kind of know what I do. Could be right, could be wrong, but in general, what are you trying to do there?
They still haven't. I haven't seen it. I'll usually stay around like 8 amber, sort of the max that I'll ever go to, because there's a lot of cards that can take you off of 6, off a lot of stuff too that takes you off of 7, like Ronnie's wrist clocks.
Yeah.
So going to 8, letting them have 2 amber if they have team TP, that's all right with me. I'll usually do that, and I'll discard or not reap if I'm ever going beyond that.
I do the exact same thing. Occasionally, you even see them like look at you puzzled, but then, well, some players just kind of know. 8's the number. 8's pretty much a hard number for me. I've even discarded quality cards because I didn't want to go to, because the half a key swing is a pretty big deal. It's technically more than half a key because you do get a pip off too much protect. I do try, like, one of the things that I've done more recently, in most cases you can't control this, but and sometimes you can. I do try to start hitting 8 as quickly as I can, more purposefully than I would if they didn't have it.
To try and like bait out the TMTP.
Yeah, because I want to see it
so
as
that
soon
you can
as
be
I
safe
can.
later on.
Mm-hmm. Like I want them to play that literally as soon as they can. So I want to lure it out as fast as possible. And there has been like one case where I was playing a rush deck, a Coda rush deck, and I did intentionally go to 9, but it was turn 2. Like I wanted to see that because like that rush deck, I knew I rushed Amber so fast. If he used TMTP on turn 2, I guess it would have been his 3rd turn of the game, there's like no way I lose that game. And that is what happened. And then the next like 3 turns, I check 1. So because as soon as you played that card, I could go to whatever I wanted. Because I was playing it back with like 2 dangerous calls.
Feel safe after that's done.
Yeah, I mean it had 2 dangerous calls, 3 dust pixies, so and like 3 ghostly hands. Like the deck generates a ton of amber, so it's just like had to lure it out. He played it, he lost. Whereas I think had he not played it, I mean, yes, I would have forged a key there, but he probably would have forged a key his next turn. It would have been a closer game. I don't know if he could have won that game, but it would have allowed, like, my next turns would have been at a much lower efficiency rate for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. So, like, going on to the next thing I look for, we're going to assume I'm playing just a standard Saurian Star Alliance deck. Always look for board clears.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have hard board clears, remove my entire board? Can they ping through wards? Do they have a lot of great direct removal, like bouncing, other sort of effects like that? Because that'll impact what houses I call.
Yeah.
So, like, should I develop a gigantic board of all 3 houses, or should I stick to 1 or 2 and reap and try and get as much amber off of those guys before they destroy everything? It really dictate the lines that you take based on the type of control they have. And you can expect when you go to a Vault Tour or some big premier competitive event that people will have hard removal, they'll have bounce, and they'll likely have direct removal too.
One of the cards that I learned to play through an event, it was a sealed event, but I learned how to maneuver around it because you got some scouting, right? Was Flux. Flux is a fantastic card, but if you know it's there, since we're talking about Archon, I've identified my opponent has this card. It can be a devastating board clear, but it's a math thing that you can actually have some influence on its effectiveness as far as the way your opponent can use it. So there's 2 things that I found that I did in the event that allowed me to kind of nerf the ability of what it could do to me. One, if you haven't seen it yet, and you're debating the age old, do I build more board here, or do I just reap with the creatures I have? Like, one of the things that you need to be mindful of, if your build a board option is all the same mathematical number of the power creatures you have out there, you probably don't want to build more board, because if they have Flux, you're creating a one-sided board wipe for your opponent. And so, like, that really helped me out in one of the matches I played, actually on day 2, when I knew my opponent had Flux. That really helps in that. So be aware of the power of your actual creatures, because that can kind of negate what Flux does to you. And then another thing on specifically with the Pompatus, the Tribune Pompatus we mentioned earlier, one of the weird things that makes this good is it can actually allow you to manipulate your powers.
And that's the coolest one, when they have Flex and you do that. That's so cool.
So, like, there was one game I played where I knew my opponent had 2 Quintrino Flux. I was like, this is a huge problem. So at some point in the game, I got that deck had 1 Tribune in it, and it had enough capture triggers that I could target where it goes to allow me to put the Amber in ways that there was at one point in the game where I had 7 creatures and all of them had a different power. It was awesome.
That's so cool.
Eventually he did play Flux. He killed like one of my dudes and 3 of his dudes just to kill the 1 Tribune. It was amazing. I was like, yes! It's like, go math!
Yeah.
So that's
really cool.
There are some things you can do specifically if you have Tribune, and then also just in general be mindful of the actual number of your board and what you're doing, and when you're building board, it could definitely allow you to delay a turn, get some more value out of the creatures you have, because it's a great card, but I don't think there's many people out there that are going to be holding the card for like a later turn. So in general, they're going to play it on their Starlines turn.
Yeah, definitely. And once you look at the board clears that your opponent has, I always look at, when do I need to use my board clears? Do they have specific creatures that are really good? Are they going to capture a bunch and I need to bounce that? So you basically just do the inverse of what you did.
Yeah, for sure.
See where you can apply the pressure, the pain. So what do you do after that?
What do you mean?
On the Archon card, is that all you do? And then you're basically done.
So my main pass is still look for scaling steel, which we already covered. Then I do look for creature control. I specifically don't, like, I'm not necessarily looking for board clears unless I am playing a Saurian deck, and then I need to know what that looks like. I'm always going to register Flux and Red Alert, because I'm getting better. But for the first month of Worlds Collide, Red Alert has wrecked me in countless games. You witnessed a lot of them, actually.
Yep.
I'm just okay, there we go. I lose another game because it's
kill me. Play all my creatures.
So Red Alert can lose you games, people. You need to register it. It's actually not that hard to play away from it. It's easy to keep the numbers the way they need to be. But yeah, so I register Flux and Red Alert a little bit more now. After last event, I'm going to register Kincan's Blaster for sure. It can archive your creatures.
Yep.
And yes, I knew that prior to the event. But if you don't remember the card being there, you don't remember the card being there. So I generally try to register all creature control, not to memorize it, but I just go through, like you mentioned this earlier about knowing like what's relevant to your unique deck. Haha, they're all unique, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the big thing that Wookie and I talk about is reps. You need to have the reps with your deck. You need to play a lot, so you need to know specifically what to look for. And I try to go through the deck list and look for what the creature control is and how it affects my deck. I know this is ironic saying this. I do this. Somehow I did not register the most important card in my opponent's deck last time. And I just kind of process that information. It's like, okay, you have Nature's Call. What does this mean to me? At the time, I was like, if I'm talking about the deck I was running on day 2, Nature's Call is a big deal in my deck. Like, I do have dinosaurs. I don't need to exalt a lot in that deck, so it's always an option. That's not necessary. Like, that's not the win condition of the deck I was using. So it's not like if I don't exalt all the time, I lose. So it's just so if they did have a bunch of Nature's Call, I just don't do that, and I'll be fine. So like just how the creature control interacts with the creatures you do have, which is more important. That is a step that I have added since playing a Worlds Collide deck, because back in the Coda era, almost all of the decks that I played, I really don't care if they kill my creatures. That's just how a lot of great Coda decks work. It's like, I have creatures. If they exist again when I call this house again, great.
Yeah, you just get the value off that initial turn that you play them.
Yeah, but now I'm not like necessarily trying to memorize what their creature control is. I'm trying to process how it affects my battle line. And then if it is significant, then I will encode like this does this, or like Nature's Call, something I would register as being super important. Because as soon as I see it get played, that allows me to go back to my normal style. Just how it affects my deck. So after that, though, the biggest things that I'm looking for are things that I would necessarily need to be aware of because they might just lose me the game. Like we're talking about open Archon. So if they have Restringuntus, I need to be aware of this, because if I don't know this or I don't plan for this, like a lot of decks have archiving now because it's a really good mechanic. So most of my decks do. So if I see Restringuntus, I want to try to archive as soon as I can answers to it from 2 houses. So like that's another, like, so it's really that kind of thing. One of the decks, the AOA deck, that deck's like kind of hard to actually identify what it's trying to do. But if they do have a OTK type combo, I do my best to try to recognize what that could look like. We are now in an era there aren't that many. Like, Grant, what do we have that's left? You there?
In terms of like OTK in AOA?
Like OTK or even 2-turn. Like there's not a lot of stuff that's left out in the meta that could possibly like beat you in 1 turn out of nowhere. Obviously Guntus is a thing.
The crazy Genka stuff.
Okay, yeah, we haven't talked about Genka, so we can talk about that. So Genka's a thing, like the Martian Generosity Key Abduction.
If you've never played against that definitely you can lose pretty bad. It's like, oh, I'm going to stop them from forging a key, take them to 5, and then next turn they play Martian Generosity and win the game.
Well, they don't normally loot though, right? So there's still some strategies though there. Like they normally don't actually OTK that turn.
Yeah, not as much OTK.
Yeah, but the OTKs out there generally, like if you see the triple battle fleet and key abduction, they can do it. If you see you would need 2 Nature's Call, a lot of Amber on Hunting Witch or Dust Pixies, and the Chota for an Untamed set to do it. Those are fairly rare, but they're there.
Definitely seen a few of those.
I mean, the best way to against the true OTK, most of those actually don't generate Amber control like out of their decks that much. It's really just to Amber push them and like kind of not care about their board unless it's specifically in the house that can OTK you, and then just try to race them, because in most cases, the more you reap, the better your chances are to just beat them to their combo. And then if your deck has like good control mechanisms, so like if they are trying for a Jinka thing or a Battle Fleet thing, and you have control of the weak, and send the first 3 to 4 turns of the game, just control the weak them into that house and watch as they probably play no cards.
Yeah,
because they don't want
that's
to.
the best.
Like it's like they can't play their combo pieces, so that's almost a turn skip regardless of what the discard pile looks like. Because the discard pile would actually say not to call Mars or whatever. Honestly, It's the same with Untamed too. Like if they're specifically playing for like a 1-turn kill for the Chota, there aren't many decks that are that way, but there are some. Again, if it's the first 3 turns of the game, just control the weekend to Untamed. If they're trying to combo you that way, they do not want to call that house the first 3 to 5 turns of the game. They're waiting. They're trying to wait, and you can gain a turn on them just by doing that. Not every deck has control of the weak, though, but those are the best pieces. We're starting to see some more interesting counters to just combo in general. Like, what is it? Bornet kind of sucks.
Bornet's Touch.
Bornet's Touch can
action card is way better.
Literally win you a game against a Jinka deck. If you those 5 cards you hit Martian Generosity, GG, you win.
Nothing's scary because it's 5 cards off your opponent's deck. That's a lot of cards.
Yeah, like that's a mulligan if you're second player. Like that's a decent chance to hit something that's super important. Like I have a Battlefleet combo deck, and like that's a terrifying concept for some. Like the odds that they don't hit a Battlefleet are pretty bad for me. And then if they hit the key abduction, it's literally game over.
Lose.
That's the only thing the deck does. Yeah. It's like, okay, shake hands, good game. And I've seen decks with 2 of those. Bornet, I'm less impressed with. He just doesn't fire, right?
It's hard to reap. Get that to go off.
He's a witch. Call him a witch. He's a demonic witch. So I mean, those are the natural counters to combo decks. Just play Dis in general, either in Kodo or Bornet's Touch.
Yeah, Dis has always been amazing against combo. I sort of like this version of anti-combo. Like Restrain Gunta is cool, but it can sort of feel mean and rude and like luck based.
Yeah.
Where Bornet's Touch is a little more tame.
I guess. I mean, it's
a little more.
The one
tame.
running the combo.
It's not like a 1-turn death.
Yeah,
can't play any cards.
That's true. I guess most.
Like I did that to somebody at the Vault Tour, and it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Playing against Restrain Guntus, you got a mulligan if you have all of one house, or you have like 5 of one house.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
Yeah, that's rough. It's a bad win, bad beat. I mean, it doesn't really feel good for either player, but it's a thing. We have to deal with it. It's real good sometimes. So, Guntus, I don't think we. I mean, the basic idea is just to try to keep your board of each house. Try to have damage ready. What do I do against Martian Generosity? You mentioned if you haven't played against it, play against it. So, have you gleaned any information from playing against Martian Generosity? And I know you have, because I've played some against you. So what do you do?
Against Martian Generosity decks, you want your opponent to forge keys with their Amber. So often you'll see them sit, like a lot of times you'll actually see them go up to 5 Amber and potentially discard cards or just not reap because they don't actually want to go to check. They want to go back next turn and hit Martian Generosity for as many cards as possible. So I love cards that give your opponent Amber, or, if you captured Amber, give it back so that they forge.
Yep.
That's a great way to really put a kink in their plans.
Yeah, I've done that exact thing recently, just in a random game I was playing. I had my Saurians out, and my opponent had Martian Generosity deck. I'd already forged a key, and I could tell he was gearing up for the big thing. And I had code monkeyed 2 of my dinosaurs to actually put him up to 7 because my
oh nice, you gave him back the
so
Amber
he
for
forged at 7 because he was
cool.
at the number. He's at the magic number 5. They always try to get to 5 and then go boom. So he forged at 7, went to 0. He got his 1 key. At that point, I think he was forced to go to Mars to like generate 3 or 4 Amber from hand to get 8 more cards. I think he ended up getting a second key with the the Jinka, but like after that, it was a normal game, and like once that all happened, he just could not forge another key against my deck, because in that deck there's no way to get Key Abduction or Martian Generosity back.
Yeah, it's way better to let them have 1 key for 6 amber than to play this unfair game where they have 20 cards in hand. It's very difficult to come back from that.
Yep. Well, and then some of them actually have the Mars first and the Prolificator, and they can actually get the Key Abduction back, and there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do about any of that. So, you just get to watch and just scratch your head. It's like, what am I going to do next turn? Because they're going to call their archive and forge another key. So, it's interesting.
We saw an amazing Jenka deck at the Albany Vault Tour. I think a bunch of people crowding around the triple Grunt Buggy Martian Generosity Key Abduction.
Talk about that deck. Like, you got to see it. Cool. I know it beat my son in one round. Yeah. He forged like 1 key for 27 amber.
Yeah, so that was the match. It was your son against Trevor May, one of my friends from Archons of Atlanta. And that deck's amazing. Triple Grunt Buggy, okay? And Martian Generosity Key Abduction. So, I think your son forged for 24 amber at one point.
Yeah, he forged 1 key, and it was at like 24 or something.
That's disgusting in itself, like just raising the key cost of your opponent. But Martian Generosity decks love to raise the key cost.
Yes.
They love when you do stuff like play Redder. They love Mustic Mermooks, because they don't want to forge. And when you have triple Grunt Buggy, have just 2 creatures of 5 power, they can go up to, like 11 amber or something, and then hit off their MG. I think that deck went either 5-0 or 4-0. I think it lost just to a misplay.
Yep.
Miscalculating off of how many 5-power creatures the opponent had.
Mm-hmm.
So that deck's amazing. You guys should definitely look it up. It's called Techno. Super cool deck.
Yeah, just search 3 Grunt Buggies, Key Abduction, and yeah, you probably find it right there. I can't imagine.
That's why I love Vault Tours. We get to see all these amazing, unique decks in Keyforge. Like every deck's unique. That's cool. But there's some real unique
deck,
stuff.
Right? Like I never saw it, but there were stories that there was a Heart of the Forest deck out there. I thought that was dead and gone.
Maybe people hate it and they say don't play that junk, but that stuff's actually pretty good. The one we saw, it's called Mother. It has, I think, a couple ways to return the Heart of the Forest if it gets destroyed. So it has a Glimmer. I think it has in the Pen Seed.
Okay. So
but it has the classic archiving up to that key cheat potential. And so playing against Heart of the Forest can often be just like playing against Martian Generosity. You want them to forge keys.
Yep.
So
Which is why back in the day, like the fertility chant deck I had was actually real. Like it was 100% anti Heart of the Forest. Like a Heart of the Forest deck could not beat that deck. It's just like I will just give you Amber. I can do it 3 times a game. So
yeah, I remember one game went to like 37 turns that I played. It was stupid. It's so long, but just for fun. And I had to keep cycling fertility chant just to get them up to 2 keys. It was so dumb.
Yep. Yeah, fun stuff. Okay, so we talked a little bit about what to do with Jinka. Do your best to make them forge a key. To some extent, the whole racing thing applies. We talked about Heart of the Forest a long time ago. Those still apply. You want to have artifact control. Grasping Vines works.
And you probably won't see those very often, not too much of a worry.
In the last 3 Archon vaults, we've seen 1, so I'm not worried about that. What else? Like, what do I do against the Star Alliance shenanigans? The constantly, I'm gonna play Kirby's and Val and Helm, like board my helmsman. Like, what's the plan going into a game against good Star Alliance?
I think you have 2 different styles of good Star Alliance. You have what people calling board rush, so they just play a ton of creatures, really relying on their Chan's Blaster to reap out of house.
Yeah.
So, of course, if you see that sort of thing, kill Chan. Chan is just too good to allow you to reap with other creatures, so he's a big target. And definitely pack a bunch of board clears, because that stuff's pretty scary. The other style of Star Alliance is utilizing a lot of the amazing reap abilities. So Helmsman is incredible, being able to draw a whole set of cards. Kirby's amazing. So obviously killing those people is important. And that's why I like to have a lot of direct ping damage.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times those go behind whatever that Starlance guy that's a taunt, 5 power, 2 hazardous. I think it's Lieutenant something.
Kirkar.
A lot of times you'll see like Helmsman plop down behind him, and so that's where Twin Bolt extremely good. And you need more than one, because often you'll see Light of the Archons to bump up the power of, say, Helmets to 3 power, 4 power, or wards. Yeah.
That's a big thing I've noticed that I have made the decision to do recently. I mean, early on, the first thing people need to learn in this game is don't hold cards, right? But then there's like this whole like next level thing. Like there are cards you probably do need to hold, but you won't know what card you need to hold until you've played your deck a bunch and you know how important that is. Like I have 2 decks that I've just been testing a lot online, and one of them, Unnatural Selection, is one of the most important cards in the deck. If you draw it early, you actually kind of have to hold it, because if your opponent builds a big board, it just loses. It's okay if they actually like have a medium board early or whatever, because it does generate enough amber. It does do like ping creature control. It does have, I think it might have 2 caverns to like deal with that much. But if they land like 8 creatures, it has to have that card. And I noticed anytime I played it early, I just lost. And whereas games, even though I was chaining myself, holding on to it, I was winning more frequently, even though I'm not drawing as many cards as I should be. So, like, it's stuff that doesn't feel as natural, but the more I play, like, Worlds Collide versus Worlds Collide, or Worlds Collide versus AOA, there's just certain cards that are board clear type cards that are more important than I feel they've ever been. So I have been doing that more. There's no, like, scripted thing I can tell our audience to say, like, look, you need to hold this, or not, but there are just certain cards that are board-related, like I know I might need to hold. Like, I don't think I would hold a Twin Bolt in anticipation of somebody landing a Helmsman and a Medic, but I definitely would understand in relation to my opponent, if that actually can land and potentially lose me the game, that would be a consideration if I'm actually ahead already, because maybe that card draw, that 1 extra card, isn't that big a deal in relation to what could happen if that is my only answer immediately to something like that scenario happening.
Yeah, that's why I love Key to Dis, because you don't have to hold it. Yes, you just have it sit in there, waiting to clear the board when you need it.
Key to Dis is great. Unfortunately, it is a rare.
So good. Yeah, that's so sad.
Yes. But I definitely have found myself holding different cards in anticipation of removing threats that I know are more threatening. I do that more when I know I have the advantage in the game. If you are behind, just like key-wise, amber-wise, and you know you're behind, it's probably not a good idea to hold in most cases. But if I have board advantage, I definitely have been holding answers to stuff that I know could possibly swing in their favor more than I ever have, specifically when I'm playing against Worlds Collide. Because I've found, more than anything, like, Worlds Collide decks can come from behind because they have very dominant mechanisms once they, like...
once they get set up.
Yeah, once they stabilize themselves, they're very hard to do anything about for the rest of the game. Like Primus...
Some Golden Spiral, Saurian stuff.
Yeah, just like Golden Spiral Rex, Golden Spiral Primus. I've seen somebody land on one turn the Primus and then Golden Spiral him, and he's already got at that point 2 amber on him, so everything's +4. I was like looking at my deck list. I had already used the only 3 cards in my deck that could kill him, and anything else he had out at the time. I was like, this game's over. There's nothing I can do, and it's turn 6. Like, it's... I was just like, concede. Press the button. Next game. Like, it's just... There are just certain things that can just win a game, and if you have answers, that's one of the games I'm talking about. Like, had I held... that's actually that deck, too. Had I held Unnatural Selection, that game, I win. I was ahead in that game until he played that card. And Golden Spiraled him. And then at that point, I was like, he's going to just reap out the rest of the game. One of the dudes was Redder. I was just like, I have a 7-power Redder. behind a legionary or something. Like I was just like, I don't know what to do. I can press the concede button. That is exactly what I can do right now.
And like scenarios like that, that's why I put such a high premium now on Archon decks with archiving. Because there is so many things you have to have in response to certain scenarios, and archiving is extremely good now.
I've always been a huge archiving fan, but now because you just said it, you have to have the answer exactly when you need it against a lot of Worlds Collide stuff. And like Primus is just one example, Rex is another. There's a lot of like the Helmsman. There's just a lot of things like if they get one more turn, it's not like Guntus game over, but it's like basically game over.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of great options for archiving too now. You have amazing archiving options in Logos.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Millie, Eddie,
Tau Vapors, get 2 more cards and then choose one. Like that's
extremely good one.
Like no pip, but amazing, just amazing. You already mentioned Eddie. Heck, I even like Code Monkey for the reusability of certain creatures. Like
Code Monkey is good.
I love landing Code Monkey on Redder because the people love to murder him. Like if I can get him back in my archive, like half the time I'd rather him be there than the Exalt Reap thing, just because he's safe and I know I can.
Same for E of the Frenches.
Yep, perfect. A perfect example of something that you could archive for later. Like there's a lot of fun things to archive, which is why the new Logos is one of the best things to have. It's generally not the house that is going to win you the game, but it is by far the best support house in the game. It's always kind of been one of the best support houses, but Worlds Collide Logos is the winning formula as far as what's going to help the rest of the deck do whatever it's trying to do to win the game. From what I've seen, what I played against, it's not going to beat me, but it is the reason why what it beats me does beat me.
Yep.
But I think we talked about a lot. Is there any other specific strategy you, as our guest today, you would like to talk about before we kind of do some house cleaning and wrap things up?
Specific strategy. I don't know. I've been playing a bunch of Keyforge Cube. And that's been fun.
So what are you looking for? So we did talk about the Cube.
What are we looking for in Cube?
What are you trying to draft for?
What am I drafted? I draft all sorts of wacky things, oftentimes things that I've seen in vaults. So my last Cube, I tried to draft that OTK Sting deck.
Okay.
And I had all the pieces except for I needed one more key cheat or like a Nature's Call to bounce my Chota. So it ended up not being so great. But I don't know. I find it so much fun to recreate a lot of the decks that we've seen and just say like, okay, what if you gave this deck a Martian Generosity now? Like, what if you gave Galaxy a Martian Generosity?
When
it just becomes stupid.
I have only played Cube a couple times, but when I did I Mavericked Martian Generosity in the Shadows. I had a lot of fun with it.
Hey, I played with that same Cube because I had that card.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
that was crazy. That was when I made a gigantic archiving Logos, and I took Library of the Damned, put it in Logos. Then I had that Martian Generosity, and by turn 4, I had my whole deck in hand.
Yep,
it's pretty fun.
You just get so much Amber out of Shadows anyway. You're not gonna get a key that turn, but like you're gonna steal everything they've got. You're gonna after you draw your deck and everything. It's fun. It's really really fun.
Yeah, I love the Cube. I can't wait to play more Cube, especially when I go to Vault Tours. So,
I mean, there's one coming up in Dallas.
Go to Vault Tours. Do it. I'm not going to be there because it's sealed.
Oh,
but
all right.
Yeah, maybe in the future I'll get back into sealed. I just need a little break.
Okay. All right. Well, as always, we appreciate everyone coming out. If you want to support us further, there is a Patreon you can check into. Get some perks, which mainly means Wookie cracks the whip, and I will look at all your decks, tell you what I think is the best. Or just evaluate a single deck. That's one of the things, too. We have another tournament coming up this Sunday that I'm hosting. You can come to the Zom channel in Archon's Corner. It's $7.50 to register, and you can win some cash if you're first. I think you're playing it in this week, right, Grant?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yep, you can. You get a certain deck list you choose from. It's like 400 something different decks. Win or lose each round. It's Swiss. You can switch decks if you want, and hopefully win some cool prizes.
I know you have some cool Martian Generosity decks in that list. So,
all right,
people go look at those things.
Yeah.
Those might win that tournament.
They might. I guess he might have just got a hint on what Grant might be playing, I guess. I don't know.
Just don't take mine. Just don't copy me.
You can. I don't care if they're mirrors. We had 8 people last week, I think. Hoping to get more than 8. I think if we get up to 12, we're at 6 or 7 right now. But at 12, the prize goes up to $50. Heck, if we get more, it goes all the way up to 100. So we'll see. Win $100. Get all your friends to sign up. I think that's it. Well, got any last words, Grant?
If you want to stay up to date on any of the stuff that I'm up to, Crucible Tracker, Keyforge, check out my Twitter, Grant Titus KF. I post a bunch of cool stuff there.
All right, I'll be sure to check that out too. All right, happy forging, y'all. Have a good night. Or morning, whenever it is. See ya.
Dragons eating Wayne like McDonald's fries. Homicide, I'm haunted when I see the cops are driving by. The violent type that kinda gotta laugh while I just watch you die. It's murder. Take my hand through the flame. I torture you. I'm a slave to your game. I wanna chain you up. I wanna tie you down. Can I say I'm just a sucker for pain? They looking at me like I'm fucking insane. Cause me and you ain't ever one and the same. Like a cut to the vein till you see that blood on the blade. I'm a sicko rap schizo, killing these instrumentals. The illest kid with a pencil make titties swing like a breaststroke. Beast mode like playing your PS3 with a cheat code. Or opening that door when you saw that the sign said keep closed. That sorta ish. Morbid, I'm shitting on them like porcelain. Torturous, they looking for me, find me where the fortune is. Contortionist drinking 40s and Morgans, I'm a sorcerer. They told me life's a bitch, so I fucked it till I got bored of her. It's Mercules.